Welcome to the Politics and Society podcast. It's been a while since we said that, Marv. Welcome back.
Cheers, self. Good to be back.
Yeah, so today we are having a brief preview of the Dublin Central constituency. We will do a more in-depth video closer to the time. So this by-election is taking place in May to fill the vacated seat of Pascal Donoghue, who vacated his seat in November. So first things first, Marv, we'll address the elephant in the room. What chance does Gerry Hutch have in this by-election?
Well, I think he has a good chance. You can't rule him out. He did very well in 24. He pulled off 9.5% for first preferences. He was there right to the death, and it was just the way the transfers came down. He was in the fight for the final seat, but just Marie Sherlock proved to be more transfer friendly. So I think he has proven that he can pull in a few thousand first preference votes, which is what you need. But the second part of the arithmetic is, can you pull in transfers? So that's the big question with Hutch. If I was him, I would have spent the past year and a half doing my homework, reading up on how this thing works, reading up on far right talking points as well, kind of populism. Because when he ran last time, he really had no policies at all. He just said, I want change. He was quizzed by Paul Reynolds in that now notorious interview. What kind of change is that? He didn't really elaborate. So I definitely do think that he should have maybe got himself a bit more media training and kind of clued into kind of, populist politics, and he should do better. He will be relying, I think, again on Malachy Steenson, because he is running this time. And when we were looking at the transfers, Malachy Steenson gave him something along the lines of about 1,200 transfers. So there was a very strong transfer rate from Steenson to Hutch. So, if I expect that to happen again, it will be, can he pull in transfers from other realms? Also, what's going to happen to the Mary Lou voters, with Sinn Féin? I don't think Sinn Féin are positioned well here at all. So are Sinn Féin voters going to vote Hutch?
It's an interesting one because, Gerry Hutch will probably need about 8,000 votes. So because it's only a one-seater here, there's no 3 seats this time. So, the quote is going to be higher. Where's he going to get those extra 5,000 votes? Malachy Steenson's vote won't save him there. But the Sinn Féin voters, if they don't go out and vote for Janice Boylan, who is the candidate in question, will they actually vote at all? Will there be enough engagement for people to actually go out and vote? I don't know. But in fairness now, Janice Boylan in 2024, she ran in the local election. She got elected. She actually polled better than Daniel Ennis, who's the candidate we'll talk about in a few minutes. She did run alongside Mary Lou in 2024 in November. She didn't get elected. And, there is a huge vote for Mary Lou there. So if Mary Lou can get out and rally the troops to go vote, that could really be it. All she needs is just 2/3 of Mary Lou's voters and she's in. So it's going to be quite interesting to see that. And if Janice Boylan falls short, where will her transfers go? I don't know if they'll go to Gerry Hutch. I think it's interesting to know actually as well that it's going to be the first time since the constituency has been created in 1981 that there will not be a Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael representative. Is this the most left-wing constituency in Ireland?
I think,
maybe.
I suppose historically it'd be high up left-wing because it's very working class. But the question is, who is speaking to the working class at the minute? And I think there's a lot of far-right populism going around. That's really, that's really tapping into this, kind of anger, because, this is a constituency that's always been anti-establishment. That's always, there's parts of this. It's kind of a diverse constituency because you have some affluent areas up around kind of Glasnevin and Drumcondra, but, you also have, in the west, you got Cabra, then you have, into the north inner city. So, you do have lots of areas with, traditionally higher rates of social disadvantage, unemployment, renting, etc. And, there's always been a strong tradition of kind of strong, independent, anti-government voices here. So Tony Gregory is the obvious one. Then Maureen O'Sullivan retained that seat for him. I maintain that I think Gary Gannon took that seat last time out, well, in 2020, and then he held that seat again in 2024.
She beat Pascal in a by-election as well, so that's an interesting one to know too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I think there's a lot of strong kind of personal votes here, where Pascal's vote was a personal vote. It wasn't really a Fine Gael vote. It's just kind of the way it was. And if you look at Fianna Fáil, Bertie Ahern, he ran this place, always pulled in a running mate. Since he's gone, there hasn't been a Fianna Fáil TD in this area, and I don't think there ever will be. Well, not in the foreseeable future. Fine Gael, I predict something similar is going to happen. I don't think, well, they haven't selected a candidate yet, but the presumptive one would be the Lord
Ray
Mayor, Ray
McAdam.
and
Yeah.
I just don't see him taking that vote. Mary Lou is not going to be on the ballot. Gary Gannon is not going to be on the ballot. So, and particularly when you look in the inner city, this is a constituency that usually has a lower turnout rate for the national average. It's going to be a by-election too. Turnouts are lower for by-elections. But this was the sole constituency in 2024 with a higher turnout than 2020. There was higher levels of engagement. And I think that was the Hutch factor. So be it if you were coming out to vote for him and you hadn't voted in years, or you never had voted before, or if you were coming outside to vote against him. So there was a bit more engagement with it here last time, but there will be a lower turnout because it's a by-election. Governments don't do well in by-elections. That's kind of a standard thing as well. So it's an opportunity for people to give them a kick. And so I certainly don't see the government holding this seat, and it is a government seat we're fighting for here. So it's a question of, can Gerry Hutch, can he build on his profile a bit more first preference votes and do better with transfers? Or will we see kind of a replication of this kind of left-wing alliance from the presidential election, and will one of them get in,
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the only elections we can really go off other than the general election is the local elections, because a lot of the candidates we've mentioned that are or potentially are going to run in this have also run in 2024 in the Dublin inner city constituency.
Yeah.
Ray McAdam actually topped the poll in this constituency. Mind you, it was very low turnout, 1,200 votes topping the poll in a big urban area like Dublin. So I don't know, it's tough to see Ray McAdam retain that seat. I think it's interesting as well. Well, it's quite interesting to look over the pond at Manchester, Gorton and Denton at the by-election over there, because we had all these whispers of reform, Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister. It is quite similar it reminded me of like a completely different style of politics, but Sinn Féin, when we're 2-3 years out from an election, are soaring in the polls, and then the closer you get, it's a bad position to be in. Yeah, so I thought it was interesting that the Greens won that seat, even though the Reform had a high-profile candidate were tipped to win it, but and it was a constituency. They did, I know it was a Labour stronghold for a long time, but they did think that Reform could win it, and they didn't. So that kind of makes me question in these by-elections, can your Gerry Hutches win these elections? I just don't think so.
There's obvious differences there where, obviously they have their first past the post electoral system. Also the fact that the Greens are a lot more left-wing than our Greens, and they've never been in government, so they're a useful kind of siphon off of people who are disillusioned with Labour, that they can kind of, that they can move towards them. And it's a bit more of a binary choice, where, say, if you're traditional Labour and you're fed up with Keir Starmer, that you can kind of go towards them, or if you're a bit more right wing and you don't like the Tories, and you can go into Reform. It's a bit more complicated here, I would suggest, but it is a valid point that it probably shows you that maybe there's a bit too much kind of media kind of spin, and then when we get to the actual day itself, it might be different.
Do you see?
But like, yeah,
Do you see if you're fed up with, Sinn Féin, and Sinn Féin have been the left party in this constituency? There's a Social Democrats, this new party that haven't been in government. They do well in these elections. Daniel Ennis is currently the favourite to take this seat. So, is this like the Greens version of the Social Democrats here? Is Daniel Ennis like
yeah,
the UK version of the Green Party?
potentially, like he's at the minute he'd be my front runner, where I think he's a very strong contender. Where he's a local councillor. He'd be close to ally like Gary Gannon, and he has a good profile, and they pushed him early. Like I think he was, as soon as this seat was up for grabs, I think it was Hutch and Ennis were probably the first two out, maybe Steenson as well. So he's been out, his name's been out there early enough. And, so I think he's been on the ground, and, it'd be a question of, can he get those transfers in? I think Soc Dems are quite transfer friendly, in terms about like the vote left, transfer left thing, and, even maybe people voting Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. So, if he can if he can siphon off some of that Gary Gannon vote into first preferences and then get a nice block of transfers, I think it should be his seat. It would be my estimation. But like the Hutch thing,
Yeah.
like what I would worry about with Hutch is the government getting involved, because only a couple of days ago, Simon Harris, I don't know whether you've seen, where he came out with comments about, he said, quote, basic criminals should be barred from standing for election. And I think if the Taoiseach is saying
then
that,
there'd be
that's
no
showing
politicians left in the Dáil. That's what people would have said.
yeah, well, okay, I didn't want to say that, but yeah. Our parliament was founded by, under British law, convicted terrorists. But like in terms of like, with if the Taoiseach is coming out and saying stuff like that, to me, that shows signs of panic. I think if they did try to legislate for that, it's all this sort of stuff, that's just going to play into Gerry Hutch's campaign, that we're being silenced, so this is a movement of the people, we're being shut down. It feeds that kind of right-wing narrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's so sloppy, and I think they should probably stop with that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I think if they carry that kind of stuff on, that could change.
Well, then in relation to the UK as well, that could be like a Keir Starmer kind of U-turn as well. Like he's notorious for recently, so it could be something along them lines. Right, we'll save the in-depth analysis for the full preview of the constituency when we know all the running candidates. So, early prediction, Marv, who is getting elected in Dublin Central?
Well, early prediction, again, I think it's going to be an absolute dogfight. It's going to be very interesting, but I will tip Daniel Ennis right now for the seat if he can pull off that good first preference that Gannon got in 2024 and taking transfers. I'll go Ennis, but I'm not going to rule Gerry out either just right now. We'll see what happens, but I think Daniel Ennis right now.
My early prediction is going to be a very close election. I think there will be a couple of candidates on a similar first preference vote, but I do think that Sinn Féin will win this seat. I can see Janice Boylan winning this seat, and I just think Mary Lou has too strong of a base in Dublin Central not to be able to get just a little bit ahead of the pack, and I think Janice Boylan will win this. So thanks, and we will do a similar episode for Galway, and then we'll do an in-depth, longer style episode for both constituencies, both by-elections, when we know more about the candidates that are running. So until then, from myself and Marv, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe and share.